Hello, folks. I'm Robert Sines, and this is the Texas Examiner. Welcome. And I also want to welcome our host, our co-host, Mr. John Tipton.
Y'all that are following us know that's twice now that you've done that to me.
What is that, John?
That you either forgot my name or you couldn't pronounce it or something. But hey, folks, thank you. Welcome.
Yes, yes. John doesn't wear a coat, so it's easy to forget you.
In all fairness,
Yes.
it's simply because I am trying to exhibit my wife's wonderful, choice of attire.
Oh, well, then it looks great. It's a great looking shirt.
There you go.
So, folks, today we have a great show. Our shows, as you know, are variety. Sometimes we have politics. Sometimes we have law enforcement. We've had mental health shows. We've had
comedians.
Yes, we've had comedians.
A
you name
whole
it.
range.
Veterans, but today we have a show that is could be glamorous and maybe not, but it's to educate you about the life in the rural areas. What it's like to be a rancher, and also for some of you folks who are moving into Kendall County or in the rural areas and want to learn more about ag exemptions is what people call them, but are they really ag exemptions? There's another term.
That's a great question.
We're going to find out about that.
That's a great question.
So it's informative. So stay tuned, and you're going to meet two great guests. We're going to meet a real cowgirl. I hope she doesn't mind that term. She's a rancher, and she's the real deal. And then, of course, we have a subject matter expert on the life.
Absolutely. The ag life, absolutely.
So without further ado, let's introduce him. We want to welcome to the studio Mr. Steven Zeller. Steve, welcome.
Nice to be here.
Steve.
Steve, tell us what's your title and what do you do?
County Extension Agent Agriculture. I work for Texas AgriLife Extension and Kendall County. It's a partnership that started way back when with the Smith-Lever Act and continues to this day. So it puts that there is at least one county extension agent in every county in the state of Texas. Wow. So, when I started in this career 32 years ago, one of the things that we claimed was that we were the window to the university. Well, Google and the internet has kind of changed that some, but by the same token, we still get you the free advice and free wisdom that we have or that we have access to through specialists in College Station and locally in Uvalde and other towns.
And there's a personal touch, John, because I've called that office or I've gone and visited. Mr. Zeller's very accessible and his staff. If you've got a question you're afraid to ask.
I know I've abused him. I have.
Okay.
I've abused him.
That's another show.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
But absolutely, he's a great resource.
And you don't get that with Google.
No.
And then you wonder, is this really accurate or not? But
Right.
you want to know the answers to your questions about anything agriculture related.
Right.
Mr. Zeller and his team, right?
Yes, sir.
And you're there, and they're very helpful.
We do have a great staff. And y'all have had Kara on before, Dutton, our FCS agent.
Yes.
And Annette Bourgeois is our office manager. Probably has more genealogy history of the county than probably anybody else. And if I can't find a road, I can say, Annette, where is this road? And she 99% of the time is going to know where the road is and who lives on it.
Wow.
You know what? That's interesting you say that, Stephen. Now, is she a part of the Genealogical Society
Her
here?
mother is.
Her mother is. So, folks, if you think that is something that you might want to dive into and get a little bit of information on, shoot us a note to info@thetexasexaminer.com or send it to us on social media, Messenger, or however you want to reach out to us. But sorry to interrupt you, Stephen. I haven't even told you this. I had a break in service when I was on active duty for my first stint, about a 1-year break in active duty when my son was being born, my first son. And went back to Amarillo, Texas, and actually worked for the extension office in Amarillo.
My God, you were a Renaissance man.
That would have been 1994, 95.
Okay.
Wow.
See? There you
And you know what? What I can say, it was an absolutely wonderful experience. And have you ever had those moments? Of course, we don't ever want to, hang on to the past, right? But it was one of those things that, you know what, a lot of times in my life, I would have been happier there than anywhere else.
Yes.
So
For
thank
sure.
you for what you do, Steve.
You bet.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. And so, John, let's talk to this young lady.
Let's do that.
Melody Kniper, is that correct? Am I
Yes,
pronouncing it right?
Kniper.
Kniper. How do you spell that, Melody?
Kneupper.
Wow, that's a spelling bee challenge.
I know it is. It makes me, who was it that did? I want the night. It just makes me think of that. The movie with Eddie Murphy. Is that what it was? You all remember that? Are you old enough to remember that?
We're too young for that, John.
Oh,
Me and Melody don't remember that.
Sorry.
So, Melody, what do you do? You're a rancher, right? in
Yes,
this county?
so my husband and I actually raise beef cattle,
Wow.
wool sheep, and Angora goats and meat goats in Kendall County. I was born and raised in the Texas Panhandle near Amarillo, actually, just about 30 miles east of Amarillo in a small community called Claude on a cattle operation, actually. I was born and raised in the country, and that's where I am now living and raising my family. I went to Tarleton State University and got a degree in rangeland and agronomy, and then met my husband there. I went on and got my master's at Texas A&M in natural resource development, and my husband and I got married in 2011, so I've been living in Kendall County for 13 years. We live in Candelia, and my
you're
husband,
a neighbor.
Yeah. People don't move there. They don't want to move to
Stay
Canada.
away.
That's a terrible place. Stay in Bernie.
Yes. So my husband's actually 6th generation farming and ranching in Kendall County.
Wow.
And my kids will be, we hope and pray, 7th generation farming and ranching in Kendall County. So
wonderful.
that's what we're doing.
Wow, Melody, did you grow up in this life as a little girl and
I
the
did.
ranch life?
So, like, my dad raised beef cattle, and so I was raised around cattle my whole life, and in the extension program, in 4-H, FFA, and all of that. So, actually, my dad was an extension agent for several years. He actually was only an extension agent for 1 year of my life, but several years prior to that.
That's fascinating, John. She's lived the life.
Right.
And then she's also formally educated in the life.
Absolutely.
That's pretty good.
And it just brings to mind, and I know we mentioned and brought it up earlier, we try to diversify in what we do, but I'm hoping that our viewers and our listeners that may have questions about, the loop and why is everybody up in arms about their rights, and even though they may be misinformed about how some of that goes down, and you always hear about people who live in rural Kendall County.
Right.
I'm hoping that folks that watch this that don't understand what happens outside of the city limits of Bernie, the small confines the box that everybody places themselves in, and doesn't realize how important not only to the economy, but to our way of life, American way of life that we're trying to preserve out here. And so maybe this will help them cross that bridge to help them close that gap.
Sure. And I got a question for Melody. Melody, so you're currently, you've got cattle, you've got sheep, you got goats. Now, is that common, or because usually I see people just have cattle or sheep or one or the other?
Well, I feel like any farmer and rancher really needs to diversify because you never know when the ups and downs of each industry is going to be, right? But this area of Texas is really great for sheep and goats just because of all the vegetation that we have here, and the history of that livestock has helped with predator prevention. We have established predator prevention in this area just because people have been raising sheep and goats here for so long. Like I said, the vegetation, and it's established here, so that's what we've been doing.
Okay.
So. And Robert, to tie to that, Melody says the diversity is great. It is. My grandfather used to say that here in the hill country, we raise sheep and goats for profit and cattle for prestige.
Yes.
And there's a lot of truth to that. I mean, nobody really looks at raising a sheep or a goat.
So many questions just got answered. Just like
John's
that.
got a lot of cattle.
But I mean, that's what it boils down to lots of times, because the sheep and goat industry is what started this country. And you can look back in the history. There was a article I read yesterday that Tommy Phillip had on Facebook, talked about the 7-Eleven ranch in 1958, I want to say it was, bought a high-dollar Columbia ram out of Michigan or New York or somewhere, and brought it down here and put it on the 7-Eleven ranch with the 700 Columbia ewes they had. That was the largest herd of Columbia sheep in the state of Texas at that time.
Wow.
That's a lot.
So there's kind of some little
Good-
trivia that
good
you
hit.
read
Yeah,
up every
thank
once.
you. Thank
Tommy
you for
Phillip
that.
puts
That's
a lot of
pretty
that
cool.
stuff on Facebook, and it's pretty interesting reading.
We'll
Every
have to
once in a
follow
while.
him.
Right on.
Many times Cody's dad and his grandfather, but when he was alive, has said that the sheep and goats have built many of the fences or made many of the improvements on this ranch or things like that.
So that's where the money's at, huh?
Right.
That's where.
Well, and this is really, as you're talking, because I know the family history, I understand it, and of course, my wife is a Lux, and so there's some family history there as well. And now I see these old outbuildings that are on our place, and which are now repurposed because we don't have goats or sheep But like our
Because
barn,
you're prestigious, you have nothing but
we have
cattle.
But they're inside one of these barns. There's literally like 8 to 12 inches of just built up manure
Right.
over the years that's in there, and I'm just like, holy cow, this really was a mecca of.
I know that's a dumb question, but is that manure really? Is it worth anything? Can you still use it for your?
Still use it in the garden. You
Really,
use it
even
every
after
day.
all those years, huh?
There's
After all
nitrates,
those
all
years,
kinds of
it's
stuff in
still
there.
It's still a good product for your garden,
Well,
for
there
your
you go,
tomatoes
folks.
and peppers. Perfect.
There you go. And I've got something happened recently. I was talking to a friend of mine who lives here in Kendall County. He really knows about exotic animals and cattle. And I thought he was joking. He says, Robert, if you want to put some livestock on your land, he says, why don't you get these little mini cows? And I laughed at first. He goes, no, I'm serious. And so he showed me some pictures. So I want to ask you about that, Melody. These little mini cows are cute as all can be, and they're not much bigger than a dog, I guess.
Yes.
And I saw the prices that these things are selling for, thousands of dollars, more than the big beef. And
Right.
so then I asked another
boutique,
rancher.
yeah.
I asked another rancher, hey, would you have? And he goes, well, there's no meat on those. And so I'm curious, is it just a passing fad, or is there money behind
I think
that?
it's like a fad. It's like kind of like a pet more than
Yes.
it would be considered livestock. I guess, does the livestock valuation, can you use those animals?
We
for
use
that?
them, but I guarantee when you haul them to the sale barn, the livestock auction facility,
Beef is beef
they're
is
going to bring,
beef.
but they're only going to bring about 50 cents on a dollar compared to the traditional side.
For slaughter,
For
right?
slaughter prop.
But they're selling them to like Mrs. Jones in Beverly Hills that wants to have, or someone in Tennessee that wants to show off to their friends that they have little mini cows.
You say that it's been probably 6 months ago. I had a phone call one morning, Mr. Zeller, I need some help. I've got a mini cow in my backyard, and the city of Bernie has just realized that I have a mini cow in my backyard, and it's against ordinances. So I went and loaded this mini cow up here in town, hauled it out to a ranch near between Kendalia and Sisterdale.
It wasn't on my ranch. There's a problem.
Put it in its own little,
Because my wife is
little pen out there, and that's where it's going to live. And I mean, the lady worked out there, so it works out very fine. But they are many times more considered a pet than a.
So it's more like a boutique
type.
thing to
Yes.
sell them to people. There's an audience for that.
Yes.
There's a few exceptions to that. Himalayans.
Yes.
There's a market for the hair.
Oh, true.
And the smaller ones, the folks that got minis are going to like what I have to say on this one. But sometimes the portion size is more desirable in the mini stock than it is in our large stock. We take one of our traditional Angus or Hereford cross steers. They're going to might weigh 1,500 pounds when we butcher them. Those minis, you can probably be at 750, 800 pounds. So
more bang for your buck.
Your pork, your T-bone steak is going to be a whole lot
Like
smaller
that.
size.
Wow, that's interesting.
But I thought you were getting to the point that sometimes these smaller they have more. They're just bulkier, and
they're
so
bulkier.
maybe there's more mass per pound. Or
Yeah.
there's a formula there somewhere
Yeah,
that maybe there's.
I don't think there's going to be that much variation in the size when we really break them down to bone and muscle.
Right.
Gotcha.
Like
Portion.
hanging weight.
Yeah.
I don't.
Melody, tell us about. I want you to dispel some things, because there's a lot of city folks moving in here, and you can't tell anymore because everybody dresses the part. John, for example, I see him out in his ranch wearing loafers and no hat, wearing a T-shirt. I mean, he's a real cowboy, but you'd never know, And then you see some other guy down Main Street, looks like the guy out of Yellowstone, and
Yes.
But
All hat, no
cattle, yeah, yeah. So tell us about the life of a rancher. What's the glamorous part of it, and what's the tough part about it?
I don't know if there's a glamorous part of it, but the best part of it is raising your family in that lifestyle and that environment. It's really, conducive to good morals and leadership and hard work and, just good work ethic. And so that's probably my favorite thing about living on the ranch and raising my kids there. Like today, it's raining outside, it's drizzly outside, but guess what? Cattle and
We're
sheep
feeding.
and goats still need to be fed.
Or
and
when
they
it's
still need
ice,
to be taken
when there's
care of.
ice on the ground.
Right, and so that's not fun. So it's 365 days a year, Christmas, Easter, all the days.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't trade it for anything. You
Absolutely
know,
not.
It's exactly where I want to be and how I want to be raising my family.
Wow.
So
Very well said.
Very grateful.
Yeah, very well said. And you're a perfect example, John. Your two boys, man, I love them to death. They're outliers now. When back in my day, they were just, you know, everybody was like them, you know, yes sir, and no ma'am, and hardworking. And,
right.
You know, John's got two boys that are just, you know, they're diamonds, you know, and it's because
thank you for saying that.
They've grown up in that life.
You know, and to add to that, in addition to that, you know, this is often, you know, children that are raised in this environment. There's a whole host of firsts that they're introduced to, right? Because you build a bond with these animals, you just can't help but build that bond with them. So many children are experiencing their first time with maybe a death in the family or close, you know, they're going through all these things that may take longer for other children, their peers that go, you know, don't live in the country. And so I kind of think that gives them a leg up in society as well.
I agree.
With that respect.
Mr. Seller, you're I guess, do you live in the city or you're out in the country?
No, I'm out in the country. Actually, from where we sit here, it's about probably 3 miles as a crow flies to my house.
Okay, it'd have been funny if
I don't know why I didn't know that.
I was hoping Steve would say, no, I live in an apartment. I live in a condo.
No, and I very much am like Melody. We've got cows. I've got a little batch of sheep.
Yeah.
I had goats till I couldn't keep them behind the fences I needed to. So that made it a little bit of a challenge. I just dispersed the goats and just run sheep.
Sure.
But it does make it is fun. I did tell somebody just a while ago, I said, you know, you have to get out on these kind of days, even if you don't want to. You get your shoes dirty, you get your pants, legs muddy, because everything you need to check water troughs, you need to make sure they've got something to eat if they're in a pen.
Yes,
so just lots of little things that you got to do every day. I usually tell my wife when I get home in the evenings, I don't want to go back into town. I'll just sit out here and watch the sheep graze by or watch a cow walk by, and we're okay.
Amen.
Talk about, that's better than meditation or anything.
Exactly.
Any day. Or sitting in there with the chickens and just watching all the chicks do the, you know.
Let's talk about ag exemption. Everybody says ag exemption, and that's not the right term,
Well,
right?
there's a couple of different, and I think we're fixing to be enlightened. There's a couple of different things that people say ag exemption for, but it really means something else.
Yeah, tell us about that. So can you dispel that?
Yeah, so everybody's called it ag exemption. It's been called ag exemption for the whole time I've been in extension. They've called it the ag exemption. It's actually an ag valuation or a wildlife valuation.
Okay.
You are getting a break in your taxes, but you're not getting them. Exemption says pretty much the word means you get them for free.
Right.
So that you are still paying taxes, just not as much as
you would
if you did not have the ag or wildlife valuation.
But Steve, so let's say I own 20 acres somewhere, and I've got a house on 2 of those acres, and I'm using the rest for my sheep. Do you get it on all 20 acres, this valuation, or is it just...
No, you will only get it on 18 of those. If you have 2 acres considered for your house and your yard and common area, that 2 acres will be taxed at one rate, and the other 18 would be at the ag rate.
Okay.
Which is considerably less. Now and then with that you have to be, you can let that land lay idle as we're hopefully coming out of this drought that we're in. If some of these guys want to leave their land fallow, they can go 2 years out of 7 without having livestock on it.
Okay.
Now, if we're considered still in a drought, that can be extended as long as we're in the drought.
Okay.
Which makes it kind of interesting, makes you got to kind of play the field and kind of watch what's going on. And then you also got to figure out, lots of times what we see is when folks decide they don't want livestock anymore, that's when they switch over to wildlife. Now, there's nothing with the wildlife valuation that says you can't have livestock also.
Okay.
So the biggest difference in my mind is with the wildlife, you have to report to the appraisal district every year what you've done on your property to make it more suitable for wildlife.
And the other valuation, they leave you alone as long as you have animals.
Yes, as long as you've got livestock, you're good.
Okay, that's good. That was my question, because a lot of people moving here from Houston, Dallas, California, and they want to get a little piece of land, and they want to be like Melody,
Yeah.
and I get that a lot. Like, why should I get the cattle when I can just get the wildlife exemption? So,
Yeah, but they got to have ag before they can go to wildlife.
okay.
That
You
is
know,
a
you gotta
point
build
people
it.
don't know.
If the property does not have a history on it of ag valuation, you have to build a 5-year history before you get the valuation. Now, what I usually tell folks is, writing it down on a piece of paper is all great, but everybody's got a cell phone with a camera on it. So take a picture of everything you do on your property. If you clear brush, take a picture of it. If you build a fence, take a picture. Those things mean a lot to most of the ag appraisers, because then they can actually see what's going on your property. They don't have to just read what's written down on the piece of paper.
And tell me a little bit more. Tell us, what are the details? What do you need to do to keep your wildlife exemption?
For wildlife, there's 7 categories that you need to work that you can work in.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be working in at least 3 of those every year.
Okay.
Now, what I say is, typically the folks that are real wildlife managers are probably working in 6 of the 7 every year.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they've got one they don't work in every year, but by law they have to work in 3. What I find is those that work in 3 lots of times are very marginal in what they're doing. If they're doing 5, they're probably pretty gung-ho about wildlife, and they're doing the things the right way.
Their heart's in the right place.
Their heart's in the right
The other guys
spot.
just want the valuation,
The other guys
exemption.
just want the valuation and go with
So
it.
what are those 7? Can you kind of go through?
I'm going to try to remember them all. Supplemental feed,
So putting
supplemental water.
corn out there for deer.
Corn is one version.
Grain.
It's probably not what they want to see. They'd rather see you putting a protein out.
Grain, okay. And
So
then,
they would rather see something, because we view corn to wildlife kind of like ice cream to kids.
gotcha.
So, a protein pellet would be like a kid having Brussels sprouts or a salad versus ice
Yuck.
cream.
Yeah.
So that's the way I see those 2. So it's supplemental feed, supplemental water, supplemental shelter,
Okay.
erosion control, predator control.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Now we're going to get
You
I don't remember.
you mentioned brush, like
Yeah.
clearing brush.
clearing brush, and maybe you lay it so that it stops erosion.
Okay.
Okay. Maybe
erosion.
and that also helps. If you lay it out to stop erosion, it also helps get your plant growth going in those brushy areas, because the wildlife or the deer or the horses or whatever you've got can't eat it out of those brush piles, and the plants have a chance to seed out and repopulate your rangeland.
And what about bird feeders, John? Can you put a lot of bird feeders out there? Is that considered?
There are folks that manage for certain birds.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that's interesting is I was in a program the other day, and it was talking about the range of a deer. The area that they'll cover is about 650 acres. A wild turkey, they claim their range that they cover in a year could be up to 2,300 acres.
Wow.
I never would have dreamt that wild turkey would cover 2,300 acres versus a deer 640.
How many of you folks know that?
Never would have thought that.
Came straight out of our wildlife specialist at Uvalde.
Oh, interesting.
So the wildlife valuation is unique, and I think that there's a time and a place for livestock on every wildlife facility.
Sure.
Because when we look at the Kerr Wildlife has it, the Chaparral Ranch down at Cotulla has it. They've each got places that have not had livestock or wildlife in them in 50, 60 years.
So it's a protected zone.
The protected
basically.
zone, just to show what happens if there's nothing there. And there is virtually no grass. It's all brush.
Wow.
So you kind of got to balance things out. That's part of what wildlife and the livestock do, is they can balance each other out.
Sure.
We have to make adjustments every year in what we graze and how we graze it.
Sure.
Based on the livestock and what wildlife we want to see, or maybe we're using it maybe we've got somebody coming in leasing it for deer hunting.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to tweak our livestock to fit what's going to best suit those guys also.
A lot of moving parts.
There are.
Yeah.
So how much is all this worth to the community, to Kendall County? What's the ag business valuation?
Yeah, I didn't look that one up before I left.
No, that's okay.
Sorry,
I want to say the last time we have to do a yearly report, I think I calculated somewhere around $80 million.
Whoa.
Just
That's
here.
Those aren't pennies.
It's not just pennies. I mean, you start looking around at the cattle market right now, those calves, when we take them to the sale barn, are worth about $1,800 a piece. That Dorper lamb that we haul off is worth $200. Spanish goats, what are they? They're probably bringing about $200 probably on them kids these days.
Right.
And we're looking
Sheep
about
and goats are really doing well right now.
looking at about the same input that receive the same ROI, depending on what we're talking about. Is the margin about the same for all breeds, or does it?
I'd say the margin's much better on the sheep and goats than it is on cattle.
Right.
I'd
Less
say
input.
Our input costs in the cattle
Yep.
can get pretty high pretty
The,
quick.
you know, the day-to-day maintenance might be a little higher on sheep and goats
I
because
bet.
you're having to, you know, shear and drench and do things like that. But
Do they get sick more than cattle?
oh, you know, sometimes my husband has said that a goat is an Angora goat's born looking for somewhere to die, but
We need to have your husband here with you too.
but yeah, I mean they do, and like Stephen was saying a while ago, goats need a lot better fencing.
Yes.
And so if you don't have the better fencing, you know, the net wire, and it's very well
Not cheap.
Yeah, right. It's not cheap. Fencing. I mean, the cost of fencing, new fencing's just gone up. It's
Hmm.
crazy.
I built fence
Any
for about
construction.
5 years, and after, well, I guess in 2008 when the economy, nobody could afford it.
Right.
Which, oh, by the way, that means I don't get to eat. So, yeah, and it's still that high.
Yeah.
I think it's incrementally gone higher.
Well, and like Melody said, like for sheep and goat fencing, it's a little more expensive, and it's a little trickier to build. I mean, we're trying to also make it predator-proof when we're dealing with sheep and goats. We're trying to keep that wily coyote out of the sheep pen and the goat pen because they're going to gather themselves a lamb or a goat kid daily.
Is that
If
is
they
that the
can.
biggest problem with predators, or is it coyotes, or is it anything else?
So, like, predators are the biggest challenge, I would say, when you are raising sheep and goats.
Mm-hmm.
Predators are going to be your biggest problem. And coyotes, bobcats,
Bobcats.
foxes,
Occasional
big
raccoons.
big problem
Really?
in Kendall County's dogs.
Oh, really? Dogs
you know,
too?
dogs on the loose sometimes.
Yeah, wow.
We've had several sheep recently torn up by some, you know, just dogs that are
People
in our
dump them.
area.
People dump them out here.
Right. So, yeah. Don't do
And that's
that.
another thing. You know, since I brought that
Yeah.
up, I mean, we have 10 barn cats, and at least half of them, no, I take that back, over half of them had just miraculously showed up. And back when the creek was running through Curry
Right,
Creek, the
Curry
water
Creek.
was there. These cats I found, and this is a little graphic,
Oh no.
but I found a bag, and inside the bag,
you saved them.
no.
No. Oh.
No.
Bummer.
So that happens, and so
Yes.
that's horrible. Don't do that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's
don't
like
do
a lot of
that.
ignorance out there. John, I want to talk about how when when Melody's life clashes with the city life, like what I'm getting at is a lot of people moving into town want to buy land, and you know you're raising cattle and you're making some money, making ends meet, and I come here and I say, Melody, I'm going to give you $100,000 an acre for
Right.
100 your acres. What and I'm sure that's happened, right?
Right,
What
yep.
happens there? Because a lot of people are selling their land, right, for these.
Before we go down that path, I want to say I know where you're going with this. And I just want to throw this out there. Do not come here buying ranch land expecting to be a part-time rancher.
Right.
And that's
Well,
And that's what
you're
most
not really
people-
Gonna, I mean, we're very, very fortunate. My husband's sixth generation. We
Right.
didn't buy the acreage.
Right,
that we
absolutely.
Are farming and ranching on.
Absolutely.
We don't have that input. I mean, like, I don't think you're gonna make a living farming and ranching in Kendall County if
a way
you're
of
coming
life.
here and buying.
if you have to pay for the
If
land,
you have
you're
to
going
pay for the land, you're not gonna be making a profit for a long.
You're buying it for another reason.
time.
And that
Right.
was
Right,
my
yeah.
whole point, is that most people are trying to accomplish this on a poor economy currently
Yes.
with, kids and normal life. Society already makes it tough enough.
Yes.
So we're the last bastion of what I consider to be, well, I'm not the great American way of life, but really it's the great Texan
Yes.
way of life, right? And it's fragile right now,
Right.
right? So
No.
we haven't talked about markets and futures, none of that yet.
Sure. I just find it, and I find it interesting. I've seen a lot of, a lot of young moms that come in and they want to have chickens, because it sounds like fun until the coyotes start eating them or the raccoons, and then they're in
Homesteading
shock.
has definitely got it.
It's fun to do chicken
Niche
stuff
right now.
until you have to do chicken stuff.
Exactly. And but getting back to my point is, I'm seeing the creep of people with money coming in here, and it's hard to say no. I mean, I'm always trying to
Yes.
offer John money for his land, and he won't take it. But
It's not. First of all, he knows it's not my decision. He just likes rubbing me the wrong way on that.
but does that? How do you feel about that, Melody? I mean, you see our.
So, well, I mean, they've hung on to it for 6 generations, almost 7 with my kids. So we'll just, my father-in-law, he's always said the best way to keep your kids on the ranch and to keep them involved and to be invested into it is spending time with them and having them work alongside you. So my husband,
they've got to be vested,
right? And so my husband's built the majority of the fence, the newer fence,
with the kids,
right? Or, like when he was younger with his dad,
That's
you
wonderful.
know, and so he's vested in it, and that's what we're trying to do with our kids, and we hope that they'll hang on to it. And the value's not in the actual money; it's in the lifestyle and the way of life. And
that's it.
And
that's it.
That's the value.
And it's I get to that, John, because now there's this Proposition A that passed recently in Kendall County, and they have a bunch of money that they want to use for conservation easements.
Correct. Or they're not. It's a mixture.
A mixture, leasing and buying. But
leasing, buying.
But they're doing that to try to protect the way of life out here, right? To protect some of the land, so that all these city folks are coming in and buying everything up, right? What do you know about that? Is that working?
I know there's several properties. I actually border one that is in that situation. And I went to a class here a while back on the conservation easements. It was interesting because the way I understand it, you can make it just as tight as you want to make it, or you can be fairly relaxed in how you want to write it up.
Okay.
It's a matter of how tough you want to make it on your children and your grandchildren.
Gotcha.
As they want to do something with it later on.
Gotcha.
Did talk to a gentleman that bought some land in North Carolina about theirs. The way their laws are over there on the conservation easements, say if there's a 2,000 square foot house on the property that you buy, that's the only size house, that size or smaller, that you can build.
Okay.
It cannot exceed that square footage.
Right.
Ours are not typically that crazy over here yet. But you can say there can be no more than 5 houses, or you can kind of put all these different stipulations. But the more stipulations you put on it, the less value that property's going to have later on when somebody decides to get rid of it.
Right.
So it's kind of a double-edged sword.
Piss
as you
off your
play that game.
grandkids.
Piss off the grandkids, great-grandkids, or make it to where the land's not worth a whole lot, but if they decide to ever get rid of it.
That's how it works.
So, I'm proud to sit on the Kendall County Parks board, and so we get updates on what's happening in that Prop A committee.
Yes.
And from what I heard and what I've seen, these board members, or these committee members are faced with a very tough challenge on how to do the valuations and what's going to be better off for the county in the long term. Do we do a fee simple purchase, or are we going to do the leases, right? And so, at the end of the day, and then on the other flip side of the coin, Robert, guys like you and I that do have property that would qualify. I know yours would, and I know mine would if we wanted to go that route. And it would be a great investment for the county, but how do you evaluate that?
Yeah, it's hard.
Right? How do you evaluate?
I've looked at it myself, and and it's a real challenge to figure out, what do you want to do with it?
Everybody's waiting for that first one.
Part of it you got to figure out, and I think from my standpoint, from Melody's standpoint, you got to start asking the kids and the grandkids, what do y'all want to do with this property in the long run?
Wow.
It's maybe not what old Steven wants to do or what Melody wants to do. It's that next generation.
Good
What do
point.
they want to do with it? What are their goals?
Right. So I think it would matter a lot more how many heirs are there out there. So Cody's dad was an only child, and his mother was an only child, and his father was an only child. So that land just got to go down one stream.
Right.
I know several families in this area that have thousands of acres in Kendall County, and there's tons of heirs. And right now everybody's working together, but one of these days they might not all be working together. So I think that plays into it. Like how many people are out there that are gonna, how many times is the land gonna get split up?
Well said. Yeah.
Yeah, and we went through a situation like that a while back, but so I'm very familiar, and they can get ugly.
Oh yes, of course.
Family, it's ugly, and thank the Lord that that's behind us and everybody's A-okay. But some families don't do that.
That's right.
And it's sad to see when that happens over something that is as valuable and could benefit everybody as a piece of land. So.
John, I want to ask Steve, I guess, getting ready to close here, Steve. Is there something you want to share with our mainstream viewers about your what your department does and how you can help them, or some of the questions you get asked a lot?
Sure. You're going to like this one. The one question that usually comes up to us, we didn't get as many of them this year. Mm-hmm. Usually on April 15th, we are the extension office. So they want an extension on their IRS. No. We'll get 2 or 3 of those every year on April 15th.
I don't appreciate you outing me like that, Stephen.
I was about to say, there's an idea for next year right now.
Yes, you actually get those calls.
Yeah, we get those calls. But I want to say, I guess, to me, our major deal is, we are the window to the university. We can help you answer questions. We're not going to give you any money to do anything property-wise. We're not regulatory. We are strictly there to give you advice on what to do with your property. We're not going to recommend, Company A over Company B. We're going to give you a list. Here's 5 or 6 guys that do that job.
Nice.
And then let y'all, you as the landowner, go do the research. Now, if you see that I've got somebody working on my property, that's probably the one that I would recommend.
There you go. That's smart.
But, we're not supposed to recommend any one individual. And we usually try and do a pretty good job of that, of making sure we're not just recommending one individual to do each job.
And isn't your office the one that if somebody out there has a garden or something, or they can go get some samples of their soil and bring it to your office, right? And y'all can send it off?
Actually bring it. They can come get the soil sample bag. We've kind of tweaked that a little bit.
Okay.
You can come to our office and get a soil sample bag and the paperwork, and then we'll send you home with it, show you how to do it, and then you send it to College Station, get your soil sample. If it's not a busy time of the year, they'll get it back to you in about 10 days.
And why would somebody want to do that? Why would they want to do it?
Why would they want to do it?
Yeah.
The prime example is if you're, the call we get nearly every spring is, I just walked outside and my St. Augustine grass is yellow. What are we going to do about it? Well, more than likely it's missing nitrogen.
Right.
Okay.
Nitrogen's the first thing that we worry about when it comes to crops, yards, trees. There's 2 things that will make plants grow. That's nitrogen and water. And we hadn't got much water lately.
Right.
And the nitrogen is the other key component. So if you run the soil test, nearly every one of them is going to show the same thing, that all of our soils are low in nitrogen, because it is one of the nutrients that leaches through the soil.
Right.
Potassium and phosphorus stay in the soil profile. Nitrogen leaches through.
Gotcha.
So it just disappears, so you got to add nitrogen. So everybody's is going to show low on nitrogen. Their pH is going to show a 7.2 to a 7.8. So I never worry much about that. We know it's going to be.
Right. And you guys don't discriminate if there's a gardener that lives in town of Bernie, and he just wants a little sample for his garden.
That's all.
Or there's a rancher like Melody that wants to check a pasture. You treat them all the same,
now,
right?
The squarehead in me comes out when somebody wants to do their field and it's 40 or 50 acres. Yes. The Aggie way would be to say, every 5 acres you need to test.
Yes.
And you need to run a separate test. Well, we don't precision farm in Kendall County like they do in the Midwest.
Right.
Our fertilizer, our equipment is not that sophisticated. So I tell the guys here, take a sample for every 5 acres of your 40-acre field, mix it together in a 5-gallon bucket, and send 1 sample in, because you're going to set that fertilizer spreader the same for every 40 acres.
And we're going to save the state taxpayers a little bit of money on this.
Yeah, it's interesting. And does this cost anything to come and get a sample?
It does not cost anything to come get the stuff from us. It does cost when you send it to College Station. I think the routine sample's $10.
That's not bad.
And then if you don't understand the results, when you get them back, you come to the office, we'll sit down, talk about it. We'll explain fertilizer.
You guys provide a lot of services, and I hope folks that are watching this take advantage of it. Of course, Steve may get upset at us when 100 people
all of a sudden showing up. But protein analysis as well, all right?
Protein analysis on your hay. If you want to feed hay and you wonder why your livestock isn't doing well, it may be a quality issue. Years ago, I got in trouble with a producer that guy came in. He said, I'm going to buy some hay, and I want to buy these round bales. I said, well, what's the protein analysis? Well, I don't know. I said, well, go get a protein analysis done. Buy that stuff on protein value rather than just on how much per round bale. Well, then the guy that was baling the hay came in and said, why are you telling people to do that? I'm trying to sell hay. I said, well, I want them to have quality hay. Well, by gosh, I won the state hay show back in 1972.
Oh, no.
That has nothing to do with the 1998 value of hay.
This is
But, the protein on feeds is really critical.
Yes, sir.
Occasionally we end up with other issues. Maybe somebody's having a reproductive issue with their sheep or goats. And maybe it's something that's off in what they're feeding. We can send those samples. There's labs in San Antonio and Schertz area that can test those feeds and tell us if something's off or something's not right in those feeds to help them get things back on track.
Fantastic.
And Robert, I know you said that we're fixing to wrap up, but I have to ask.
John will keep you here for 3 hours.
He knows that. It's kind of, he sets me up that way. I want to ask a tough question about, you heard me mention.
Be glad to answer.
Well, you heard me mention, futures, right? And then now we're looking at, and a lot of us have heard on the news that, snippets of bird flu. Okay, you've heard chicken farms catching on fire, and then with a byline of terrorism. So, is there really a threat? Is there a threat towards our nation's cattle industry?
Melody's smiling. I don't know if she's going to say something.
I'm smiling at Stephen because he needs to answer this question.
Oh, okay. You're going to punt.
That's the bird flu's interesting. I've kind of figured that might come up this morning or this afternoon while we're talking. There's a few cases. I want to say there's 7 states right now that have got a little bit of issues with it. From a milk standpoint, it's all in dairy cattle. It's not going to hurt our milk situation. The pasteurization process takes care of all of it. There is a little genetic marker that gets through the pasteurization, but they have not been able. They cannot incubate it for it to cause any issues. So that's been a plus. They are doing a bunch of research. There's the one human case in Texas. The report this morning was that guy's doing just fine. They've got him past the bird flu. He's not chirping or anything anymore.
No feathers.
No feathers growing or nothing. So, but those kind of, I think there is a little bit of we always have that in the back of our mind, a concern as to what could happen to our food source, to our livestock. And I guess that's one reason we do the things we do, and we check our livestock fairly regular. I know some folks probably get aggravated with farmers and ranchers because sometimes we're pretty protective of what we've got out there.
Yes.
I mean, same as y'all would do within a business, in a regular business. HEB's not going to let you just wander around and take stuff off the shelf and sample it.
Right.
We're not going to do the same thing as a farmer or rancher. We don't need everybody out there just wandering around looking at what we've got. Not that we care that if they know what we got. It's more that we worry about what could happen with our lives.
Right.
Or who could get hurt in the process.
Wow, it sounds like your office is another. That's another resource. If I'm a conspiracy theorist or I'm panicking about what I'm hearing in the news, we could call your office, right? And say, hey, what's going on with this stuff that CNN reported?
Yeah, that's one thing. And Melody's husband is our Farm Bureau president for Kendall County. And so we meet once a month as a committee and discuss a lot of these topics ourselves within the committee of, hey, what's happening? What are you seeing or what are we hearing? So it gives us a good way to kind of figure out what's happening within our own community.
Well, you're a good resource, and that's got to call his office if you're concerned about anything ag-related. And I got one last question.
Oh, and I still have one more. I just opened the box. I know we're rushing on time. We can edit here, but I do want to know the answer to some of these.
Well, go ahead. Ask your tough questions.
Okay.
John loves controversy and conspiracy.
No, and well, it kind of is.
Yeah.
Okay. We've already talked about how expensive it is already to raise any kind of stock, right? I mean, feed's going up, transportation costs are going up, everything's going through the roof. There are those in the community that say that those are manufactured, that there is a larger design that's out there to shrink our live animal market and make a shift into fake meats and fake protein sources, and and it's all part of the global warming initiative.
Oh my God, sorry.
I would argue that one because I want to say that the numbers say that 90% of farm and ranch land is owned by families, not corporations.
Not Chinese corporations.
Not Chinese corporations.
That's good to know.
Probably
I think
a fairly
it's
close
even
number.
higher than 90%. And
Yes.
something else you want to keep in mind is in the United States, we have the safest, most dependable food source
Wow.
of any
Of any
nation
kind,
in
yeah.
the world. And we just, I don't know why people doubt it so much.
Thank
but
you
Because
so
of people
much
like
for
John,
saying
he stirs
that.
the pot on
Yeah.
purpose.
No,
Yeah.
this is what I want. This is exactly what everybody needed
No, and
to hear.
I'm glad you did throw that in there because I love what you just said. That
Perfect.
to reassure people that
right.
Melody brought something up a while ago that homesteading is extremely important, or is on the forefront of everybody's plate right now.
yes,
And there's quite a few folks that are doing farmers markets and
Yes.
small things, cottage type stuff, here in the county, that it's grown quite a bit.
Yeah.
There's quite a, and there's, myself included, there's several of us have changed some of our marketing techniques. Maybe the crossbred calf that I've got standing at my house that doesn't match the color pattern that the sale barns desire, I keep at my house and I feed them out and I sell halves of beef that way. Maybe we've got half a dozen different folks doing that. So I think as long as our producers keep things in the right perspective and keep producing high quality product, we don't have an issue.
Wow, that's comforting to know.
It is very comforting.
The last question I had for Melody was, Melody, because you live the life and you're formally educated in the life, people that come in here, I don't have anything against folks that come in here that never been in ranching, but they want to get in there. They buy 100 acres and they want to. Well, what advice would you give to someone that's entering into this lifestyle for the first time?
Whew. Set your expectations low. No. I would say a great resource is Stephen for the 100 acres, just getting started. You don't have any, background in this.
Don't be intimidated. Go to him,
Right.
and you're going to treat him nice,
We're
right?
going to treat him right.
Okay.
Fair and honest is what you're going to get there. And so that's what I would say. Maybe even try to reach out to a neighbor. If you have 100 acres, then you probably have a neighbor that's got 100 or more acres.
Right.
And hopefully that they're a multi-generational farming or ranching family and that they can help you out. Farmers and ranchers are friendly people. Where, one of my favorite things about living on the ranch is inviting people there and showing them our life. And
Yes.
I've had
Love that.
lots of, I used to teach public school.
Okay.
I homeschool now, but I had all of my students come out to our ranch and see our ranch. And now our homeschool group comes. And so we do want you to know the truth about where your food and clothing come from. And there'll be somebody out there that can help you and get started on your 100 acres.
That's wonderful.
One thing I'll add to Melody's comment there, one way that we can relate lots of times to these new landowners is that grass and those forages that are growing out there is your bank account for livestock.
Well said.
If you deplete it down to nothing, your bank account is zero, your grass is going to be zero.
So it's worth investing in some
taking care of things, and doing things the right way. Only graze, what we always say is graze half, leave half.
Well, you
and
got to
if you
rotate
can stay
if
with
you
that
can.
philosophy, if your bank account stays half full all the time, it's in pretty good shape.
Right.
When you drag it down to zero, it's hard to come back
It
to
is. It's real hard.
on that pattern. So, just leaving something out there makes a big difference on what we can do in our rangelands.
Especially during a drought.
Yes.
Yeah. What a great show, huh, John? We've learned a
is
lot.
great.
Dispel some of your conspiracies.
I got to throw another
One more?
curveball. No, not a curveball. I just want to say that also, folks, in case you aren't aware, the Ag
Valuation.
Extension Center is also a real big supporter of all of our agricultural groups and clubs like the 4-H and FFA. Those are wonderful programs, and I also want to add, if you're from California and you're watching our show, you're welcome. You are welcome here, but please go see Stephen, and he will tell you how to help care for your property. But come and be a part of this great community.
Don't be
if that's what you
intimidated.
can do.
Right. Yeah,
Don't be intimidated.
Learn about our hill country climate because it is very fragile compared to lots of places.
It is.
We're in that 28 to 32 inches of rainfall a year. It is not a great environment to grow grasses. If you're around College Station and you're getting 60 inches of rain a year, it's a whole lot easier to grow grass.
Sure.
But every piece of ground has a challenge. You just have to know what that challenge is for each piece.
Yes, sir.
Wonderful program. I learned a lot, and
I'm done, I promise.
we could stay here all day and learn to live the life. But as you can see, these folks are fine folks. They're willing to help. I think a lot of people moving here, they're intimidated by the lifestyle, but it's a wonderful lifestyle. Like Melody said, it is a lifestyle, a great way to raise your family. And don't be intimidated. You got a great resource with Mr. Zeller here, and visit his office. It doesn't cost you anything.
Come by our office, give us an email. We'll send you out any publications that you need or anything that you want to know about educational activities we got going on.
From gardening to livestock.
Gardening to livestock.
I'm going
to put a little tidbit out there that we're going to partner with Melody and the family on doing some things out on the ranch and taking folks actually out and say, let's go look at the goat operation. Let's go study the sheep operation.
Is this something you're going to roll out soon?
It's going to roll out in August. When they decided shearing time, we're going to go to Kniper's and we're going to talk about.
Maybe we can help them get the word out.
We're going to talk about production agriculture.
You heard it here first, folks. And maybe they'll let us go on site and do a remote on it.
We're going to talk about what it takes to grow them, what it takes to shear, what all that is.
It's a great program.
It'll be a good. Yeah. We're probably going to limit the amount of folks that can go. So
okay,
be paying
as long as there's going to be barbecue steaks.
Yes, absolutely. I'm there.
Yeah.
Right on.
Well, folks, thanks again for joining us here at the Texas Examiner. We had a great show today. If you have questions of our guests, we're going to put up their information, especially Mr. Zeller's office, so you can visit them and get your questions answered. John?
And if you're not living in Kendall County, you're some other county in the in Texas. Reach out to the research. They have peers in every single county in the state of Texas. Right. They're the same, taken from the same cloth.
Right.
If you can't find them, call my office, and Annette will tell you the phone number of that county office.
Okay, awesome.
Right on.
Awesome.
And folks, please don't forget. I know you hear it on every video, every podcast, but we really do need you to reach out there, hit the button. The subscribe, the like. Please share this with your friends and your family and show us a little love, but just giving us a comment and saying, hey, we appreciate what you do. And if you don't appreciate it, tell us what we can do better, and we'll get it done. Thank you, Kendall County. Y'all have a great day.